Today we are doing, this is Apex Chapter 1.5 for Precalculus or Chapter 2.4 for Algebra 2. So make sure you are doing the right video. Today we're talking about point slope form of a line. So point slope form is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, where a point on the line is x1, y1, and m is the slope of the line. So remember that when you're working with this point slope form, this x and y do not change. They stay the same. Okay, but then we're also going to be working with changing it to slope intercept form. So our steps to do that, we're always going to start on the right hand side here. We're going to distribute the m to both the x and the x1. And then we're going to add or subtract the y1 to both sides to get it so that y is all by itself. Okay, so let's do an example. Suppose the points -5, 1 and -3, 7 are on a line. First thing we need to do is find the slope of the line. So slope, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which you'll also start seeing written as delta y over delta x. Okay, that means a change in y over a change in x. Okay. So now I'm just going to plug those in. So m equals 7 minus 1 over -3. If I started with the 7 for the y, I better start with the -3 for the x, minus -5. Okay, and I'm sorry, I know this is hard to read, especially since I am left-handed. I apologize. All right, so 7 minus 1 is 6 over -3 plus 5, which is 2. So that gives me a slope of +3. If I was going to be graphing this, I would leave it as -3 over 1 for the slope. But if I'm just finding the equation for it, I'm going to write it as 3. The reason I like to leave it over 1 if I'm graphing is because a lot of times students forget that there is a run of 1, even if it's just an integer. So now I'm going to write the equation in point slope form. I have two choices here because I can use either point. So I'm going to write it as both, but you only have to do one of them. So y minus, if I chose point -5, 1, it would be y minus 1 equals 3 times x minus -5. Okay, and notice that that changes to a positive. If you guys know that already, you can just write it as x plus 5. That's fine. Okay, but I could use the other point also, so I could write it as y minus 7 equals 3 times x minus -3, okay, and get the exact same thing. And then when I solve, I can choose once again either point, and either one of these I choose to solve, it is going to come out the exact same when I solve it and put it in slope intercept form. So I'm just going to take the first one that I chose, so x plus 5, and I'm going to solve it. So I'm going to start by distributing over here. Okay, so I get y minus 1 equals 3x plus 15, and then I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So my final answer then will be y equals 3x plus 16. Okay, and now that's in slope intercept form. Okay. All right, so here's another one. So this one, I'm not asking you to find the slope this time. I'm just saying, hey, what is this line in point slope form? You still have to find the slope. I'm just taking a step out. So we're going to say m equals 3 minus -1 all over 13 minus 11. So that's going to be 4 over 2, which is just 2. So my slope of this line is 2. Very first thing I have to do. Then I'm going to choose one point. It doesn't matter which one. And I'm going to put this in point slope form. So y minus 3 equals 2 times x minus 13. Once again, didn't matter. And now I'm going to put it in slope intercept form. Okay, and if you wanted to use this point, you could. Okay, it would be y plus 1 equals 2 times x minus 11 if you chose to use that other point. Okay. So now I'm going to distribute. So I'm going to get y minus 3 equals 2x minus 26. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And I come up with y equals 2x minus 23. Okay. So it doesn't matter which point I use. Remember that your slope-intercept form is going to come out the same. Okay, if the slope of a line is 3 and a point on the line is 1, -2, what is the y-intercept of the line? So the very first thing I'm going to have to do is actually put this into the correct form. So y plus 2, or any form actually. So y plus 2 equals 3, the slope times x minus 1. Okay, well now to find the y-intercept, I'm going to have to change it to slope-intercept form. I'm going to say y plus 2 equals 3x minus 3. Subtract 2 from both sides, and I get y equals 3x minus 5. So my y-intercept, remember, is always a coordinate, and it is 0, -5. And my y-intercept is not just a number, it is an actual coordinate on a graph. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So this says graph the line y equals 2/5 x plus 1 on the coordinate grid below. Okay, so the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to graph that y-intercept. That's my 1. And I'm going to graph my slope. Now remember, with slope, 2 over 5 is the same thing as -2 over -5. Okay, and just as in before, you know, if I write -3 over 4, that's the same thing as 3 over -4. Okay, so that just means the whole fraction is negative, or the whole fraction is positive. And remember, a negative and a negative mean it's positive. Okay, so if I run out of graph in one direction, I can graph it in the other way. So I'm going to go up 2. So this is +2, +5. So I'm going to go +2 up. I'm going to go +5. Okay, but then I've ran out of graph, so I can't graph any more points. So now I'm going to use my down 2, my -2, and my -5, okay, to graph another point. Okay, and then using a straight edge or freehand, if you're comfortable with it, you can draw your line. So at this point, you know, in the past and in geometry, I know I always took off if there were no arrows at the end of lines, but now that we're in Algebra 2 and pre-calc, we should know that if it touches the end of a graph, then it's going to keep going forever and ever and ever. If it doesn't touch the end of the graph, then we know that it stops at some point. Okay. So we've looked at lines in slope-intercept form and point-slope form. Now we need to talk about standard form of a line. You're going to see lines in this form a whole lot. So the standard form of a line is ax plus by equals c. So a and b are coefficients, and c is just a constant, just a number. Okay. So when an equation is in standard form, and really when it's in any form, it's really easy to find the x and y intercepts. Okay. So we're going to substitute 0 in for each value. But keep in mind that if I have 0 and some y value, that's my y-intercept. So I had to plug 0 in for x. And to find my x-intercept, it's going to be x and some 0 value for y. So that's my x-intercept, and I had to plug 0 in for y. So I'm always plugging 0 in for the opposite one I'm looking for. So if I'm looking for a y-intercept, I plug x in as 0. If I'm looking for an x-intercept, I plug y in as 0. So here, this first one says find the x-intercept. So I'm going to make my y value 0. So 2x minus 12 times 0 equals 13. 12 times 0 is 0. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 2, and I get x equals 13 over 2. But that is not my x-intercept. My x-intercept is actually a coordinate, 13 over 2, 0. Okay, you guys need to really get in the habit of writing these as coordinates, because that is what they are. Okay, what are the coordinates of the y-intercept? So now I'm going to plug x in as 0. So that's going to give me 2 times 0 minus 12y equals 13. And that's going to be divide by -12 on both sides. And, equals 13 equals 3. I wrote that here too. I just caught it. Okay, so that should be 3/2. I apologize, you guys. I was writing 13 for some reason instead of 3. So that's a 3. Here, I'll erase that. If some of you are going, what did she do? Yeah, so that equals 3. All right, so then I'm going to get y here equals 3 over -12, which I can simplify to -1/4. Okay, but that's not my answer. My answer needs to be written as 0, -1/4, because my y-intercept is a coordinate. Okay. Sorry, I cut my finger. Let's see. All right. So let's take a look. So the equation x equals -9 is that of a, what kind of line is it? Well, if I graph this and I have some x value here that equals -9, well, that means it's going to equal -9 everywhere it goes, and it's a vertical line. Y equals some value is going to be a horizontal line. Okay. So if you're struggling, draw a little graph of it. Say, oh, x equals 9. Well, x equals 9, -9 here, -9 here, -9 here. Okay. Draw a little graph of it if you're struggling. So here the same thing. So we have horizontal and vertical lines. One has a slope of 0 and the other has a slope that's undefined. So if I start with, I don't know, we'll say a horizontal line. Okay, so if I start at this point and go to this point, my rise, my up and down is 0, and my run is some number. So my slope is going to be 0 divided by a number, which is 0. So a horizontal line has a slope of 0, while a vertical line has a slope that is undefined. So in addition to graphing lines and working with just lines, we can also replace the equal sign with some other signs to produce linear inequalities. So we can do less than or equal to. We can do greater than or equal to. We can do just less than, or we can do just greater than. Okay. So some important things to remember. So just like when we're doing graphs, if it's touching, if a graph here, say this line was touching this point, it would be closed. So the same here, if it's touching and can include a portion, it's going to be a solid line, okay, when we graph it. But if it does not include it, just like we have our open circles when we're drawing graphs, this is going to be an open line. In other words, it's going to be a dashed line. Okay, so those symbols goes with these lines. Oh, I can't talk today. All right, so let's actually look at what linear inequality is graphed here. So the first thing I'm going to find is I'm going to find my y-intercept. My y-intercept is the point 0, 2. I'm graphing above the line, so whatever my y value is going to be greater than, and it's dashed, so it's just greater than whatever my equation is. So the last part I need is my slope. So I'm just going to find another line here where it crosses, and I'll say, so my slope is up 1 over 3. So 1 over 3, so y is greater than 1 over 3x plus that y-intercept of 2. Okay, so the same thing with the last one, except now we're given an equation and we need to graph it. So the first thing that I see is that this is a less than or equal to sign, so it's going to be a solid line. Okay, now I need to graph just like I would a line. So my y-intercept is 0, -1, so I'm going to graph that point. And from there, my slope is negative. So it's either -1 over +1 or +1 over -1. So the whole fraction is negative. And once again, remember, I like to put over 1 when I'm graphing so that I remember there's always a run, okay, of at least 1. So here I could go up 1 and then -1, or I could go -1 over +1. Okay. And from there, it's a solid line because it's less than or equals to. Okay. And if it's less than or equal to, it's going to be that way. One way you can check is to plug in a point. Okay. So like I like to plug in 0, 0. So I would say 0 is less than or equal to -0 minus 1. So I would get 0 is less than or equal to -1. If it's false, no shading. Okay. If it's true, then that's where you shade. Okay. So if you want to double check and see if it works out, okay, and if you've shaded in the right spot, that's a way to do it. And we'll get into that more in both classes when we do graphing parabolas and seeing where we have to shade on those. So that's it for chapter 1.5 for pre-calc and 2.4 for algebra 2. I'll see you next time.